And we're coming to you live for the Built Ford Tough Studio. Boomer Esiason, Greg Giannotti. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan. Simulcast across the country on CBS Sports Network. And wherever you are in the free Odyssey app, good Friday morning. It is a feel-good summer Friday, and baseball starts up again tonight. The Mets and Yankees back in action. I feel like we have not seen them play in about a month, but they will be back, and it's going to be a very important second half for the futures of these franchises. And, man, it could go either way with both of them. So this is going to be one hell of a ride through the end of July, August, and September for both of those teams. We got the Open Championship on in here today. It's just so great to have live sports at 6 o'clock in the morning. And good thing the TVs are working because the computers still aren't working anywhere. At least mine isn't over here. Yours isn't in your office. I think we've got phones back as this Microsoft Cloud situation that crash that happened overnight was grounding flights and sending banks into hysteria. So, yeah, not a good thing to wake up to. But it's still a feel-good summer Friday, so screw you, Microsoft Cloud crash. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
All right, G. Good morning, man. You know, by the way, the weather is fantastic today.
Oh, beautiful, yes.
So, you know, we're past all that heat and humidity and all that ugliness
for now. Yes.
At least for now, that's right. And I have to say that thinking about the Mets and the Yankees as we get ready to start here, the, I guess, unofficial second half of the season, you know, there are a couple players that come to mind that have to basically now make their money, make their opportunity to stay here and use that opportunity and come through. And Pete Alonso is number one on that list. There is no question about it in my mind that it's up to him as to whether or not he's going to end up staying here. I think the team wants to keep him, but I also know that they are going to be keeping a very close eye out over the next 2 weeks as to how they end up coming out of this All-Star break. And, you know, David Stearns is a loner. He is a guy that is basically detached. He sits and watches from afar. He's not a very engaging guy. He's more of an analytical guy. He did not grow up playing baseball. You know, one of the reasons the Milwaukee Brewers were so successful all these years under his tutelage was because he was ruthless. Now, ruthless is, you know, can be done in a lot of different ways. Ruthlessness at the GM level, we've seen it. We've seen Chris Drury do it. We've seen Lou Lamoriello do it. We've seen other GMs try to do it. We've seen Joe Shane going through it right now in front of everybody. But, you know, this is where ultimately David Stearns will decide whether or not this team is going to go and see if they can go for it. Now, I know one thing from the people that I have talked to that have worked with him. You know, he is not a guy that is going to mortgage the future of the franchise. Just know that.
Well, especially right now in this particular iteration of the New York Mets, it would be really silly to do that since what they're trying to do is the exact opposite and rebuild the farm system. That was one of the main reasons he was brought here.
Well, you know, they started that process last year, and we'll see if any of those, prospects end up being any good for the New York Mets. But I just don't see him turning around and, you know, trading any of those highly rated prospects to go out and get a relief pitcher. It's just not going to happen. So if they do tweak this this roster and, you know, they end up going after relief pitchers, it's not going to be things that are going to knock our socks off.
Oh, it's going to be similar to the deal they already made with Maton. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be we're going to eat the salary. There'll be players to be named later, and that's the type of deal that they're going to make. And I don't think unless the Mets lose 10 in a row out of the All-Star break, you know, I don't think that they're going to go crazy and sell. And, you know, Mike Puma, who covers a team for the New York Post, he writes this morning when he says, "Trust me when I say Cohen is delighted with the manner this season has transformed and wants to take a shot at autumn glory with this bunch."
Well, I mean, they'll have to add in some way, shape, or form.
But what it really means is they're not subtracting.
Right.
You know, so that's what it really means. They're not trading Pete Alonso at the deadline unless something crazy happens and they go on some horrible losing streak from now until the trade deadline, which we don't expect.
I don't think I've ever, you know, sitting here for all these years, I don't ever remember Mets players or Yankee players, for that matter, openly talking about adding players to the team. like being buyers as opposed to sellers.
Yeah.
And there have been at least, Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor. I think Pete Alonso has spoken, obviously, many times about his own situation, how he wants to stay here. But I don't ever remember a team openly talking about it so much, and this started about 6 weeks ago.
I agree, and I came in that one morning after it was a Subway Series game. It was the second win over the Yankees, and Lindor was being interviewed by Scott Van Pelt, and he on his own brought up the trade deadline and how you want to keep this group together and want to add, and I thought that was surprising because he wasn't asked about that. And then Brandon Nimmo did the same thing about a week later, so I'm with you. I mean, that's why we kept talking about how we thought that's what came out of that team meeting. One of the big themes is, if we keep playing like this whole thing's going to be blown up. Our lives are going to be upside down. We don't know where we're going to be living. We don't know. So let's get this thing together and at least finish out this season together and then see what happens.
You know what they really needed? They needed Francisco Alvarez back in the lineup is what they needed. They needed the catcher, who is the unquestioned leader of the team, and maybe not verbally, but just by his energy, the way that he plays his position, the way he goes about his business. And they lost Starling Marte. They've been able to overcome that. I mean, and here they sit, and now they start with the Miami Marlins of 4 games, then come the Yankees, then come the Braves. So, I mean, if you ever wanted to make a statement, these are the 3 series you're going to want to make a statement. 4 with Miami, 2 with the Yankees, and then 4 with the Braves.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's get off to a nice little start against the Marlins. That's really what you want to see. 3 out of 4, that would be the place to start, and I would be very, very disappointed if they lost that series and at least did not split that series as they start down in Miami, and of course then go over to Yankee Stadium. But yeah, get a nice little cushion. You got a cushion going into the All-Star break. Build on that, stack some wins, and then go into those 2 series against some better teams right after that. And the Yankees, it's the same story of what will this team look like at the end of this season, and how will the Yankees look at their season as opposed to how the fans look at their season. Because there's always a disconnect there. The fans see one thing, the organization sees another thing, and generally that is smart for the organization not to listen to the screams and yells of the fan base. But this has been so stale for so long. In the beginning of the season felt different, and that's all we talked about. The Yankees are exciting again. The Yankees have an edge to them with Juan Soto and Verdugo, and this is not the same boring snooze fest team that we have seen the last couple of years until it was again. And that's where we're at. And is Aaron Boone singing for his supper in the second half? I don't know, because it feels like he should be. But at the same time, Brian Cashman, I think that Aaron Boone's got to make a pitching change naked to get fired from this team.
I know, but let me just say that they went out and they got Juan Soto, and the moment that they made that trade and the moment that they brought him and his salary in was the moment that they signified to their fan base and to all of us who cover them that they are all in. I mean, you don't go out and get Juan Soto like this potentially for just 1 year unless you are all in. And I think when they did acquire him, Yankee fans were very, very happy. They got off to the great start. It reflected, I think, all the optimism around the team. And I'm a little bit shocked that they played the way they did over the last 30 games. But I also was emboldened by the fact that they played really well against the Orioles the last 3 games before the break. And they should have swept the Orioles. And they looked great. And if it wasn't for 2 just mind-numbingly poor defensive plays by Volpe and Verdugo, they sweep that series and they go in with a little bit of momentum and hopefully come out of it with a little bit of momentum. And they have Garrett Cole on the mound tonight, and this is the way you get it going. You have right now, 4 against Tampa, 2 against the Mets, a break, and then they have 3 against Boston and 3 against Philly. I think by the time the 31st of July gets here, we're going to find out pretty quickly just how good they are and just and whether or not they're going to add to their bullpen. And by the way, everybody in Major League Baseball
has a terrible bullpen.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was interviewing Pat Murphy, who is the manager of the Milwaukee Brewers, and I was just asking him about bullpen practices and what's going on in Major League Baseball. He told me something that I didn't know, maybe just simply because it seemed like it came out of left field when we were talking about it. He says, but we're all dealing with the same thing. We're all trying to find a combination of players that we could put out there that we can trust. And I said, what is going on with the arm problems? Why are there so many? He goes, I don't know if you know this. He goes, but every day the bullpen pitchers at 4:00 in the afternoon throw on flat ground. And they really throw. They throw. It's not just like a catch that you and I would have. They legitimately throw every single day. And then they may have to warm up, and then they go out there and they got to pitch. Maybe they throw 10 pitches, maybe they throw, and I'm paraphrasing this part of it, 10 pitches, 20 pitches, 30 pitches. And I'm like, is there anybody in Major League Baseball to tell the pitchers to stop throwing every day at 4:00? Because it's just part of the tradition of baseball. It's something that pitchers have done since as long as I can remember. He goes, I cannot find a arm specialist, physiologist, whoever, whatever you want to call them, that will agree that this is good for their arms. Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that they throw every day at 4:00.
Yeah, but then again, but if a manager of a team is saying that
but it just goes to
shouldn't
show
be
you,
doing it, then why doesn't he tell them to stop doing it?
The manager does control the game, but there are things around the team that the manager doesn't control.
Okay.
And some of those things are put in place by analytic geeks, guys that didn't play the game, guys that, are trying to come up with different ways to justify their existence on a club. It's just, I didn't realize that was a thing. And it just seems to me like maybe a guy throws, 22 pitches on a Wednesday night. Why not just take Thursday off and give your arm a rest?
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. I didn't know this. Tired of talking about pitchers and pitch counts and arm injuries. It's like I'm tapped out. I got nothing left. I'm like a dry sponge when it comes to this topic. I can't do it anymore.
And by the way, Pat Murphy's story is amazing. But anyway. He's an old school guy. He's my age, and he's been around baseball his entire life, loves the game, adores the game. But there are certain things that go on that, it doesn't matter, how old you are, whether you're Buck Showalter or anybody else. There are things that go on in this game that they can't control, and they're not going to control because the analytics aspect of the game has just infested the game, and I think it's frustrating for the older managers.
Yeah,
that's my sense.
Sure, we hear it all the time here with the old baseball fans that call up and don't understand why Bob Gibson doesn't exist anymore. So what do we have? What do we have going on here? Because this computer here is completely. I got nothing on this computer. It looks like Boomer's working. Looks like we got the call screener working now. Are you guys working in there?
Yeah, for now, 99% of our systems are operating normally. Do you have the blue restart situation?
Yeah, recovery. Looks like Windows didn't load correctly.
Right. We can ask engineering. They're going around prioritizing things, so we can ask them to look into that.
Where do you think this would be on the priority list? Probably pretty low.
Lower, yeah,
lower.
For sure.
Okay, that's fine. I'm okay with that. I got a phone that works and is tapped into the internet. It's all right.
And if you wish, you can check that if you want to sit in the other place, so that'll freak TV out. But if you can, those computers there.
No.
I don't want to. He'll be all right.
You know what that's going to remind me of? COVID, when they spread
they
us
out.
Good
point. Idiots. Hey, let me ask you, where did this all start?
It started, there's a company called CrowdStrike, which is a IT security situation.
Okay.
And they pushed out an update at midnight. And that's why the problem started in Australia, International Dateline, that whole thing, and kind of spread across the globe. And we got impacted a little after, right at 1 o'clock, and all the systems went down, but we were still on the air. Winds was on the air, but all the other stations in the cluster that were recorded on the overnight, sorry to give away that secret, they were off the air for a while.
Yeah, it kind of gives you a look into how bad things could be.
Yeah, And then there was I saw a tweet from some Australian news guy showing his newsroom with all this big screen showing exactly that and saying this is worldwide. Banks are down. Airlines are grounded.
Yeah.
And in some cities, I don't know about New York, 911 is affected. And so I told the building, I said, listen, you may have people trapped in elevators. Just wake up your bosses and have a plan in case your systems are tied to that and go down.
Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. And this is all due to CrowdStrike's update.
Correct. That is what the information is. Now, whether or not they're covering up an actual cyber attack, I doubt it because things actually have come back. So,
yeah.
And they sort of recalled the update. So, there you go.
Yeah, I noticed, too, because I knew today was a payday. So I always like to take a look. And when, like,
you got to make sure that, Daddy's getting paid.
When I woke up, I was like, oh, it's not there. I was like, that's interesting. Because normally it's there when you wake up, and then finally it came something like 5 o'clock.
Yeah, it came through
and then,
5.
But I'm sure that had something to do with it.
And then I didn't realize until later on, I watched the 1 o'clock Sports Center.
Yeah.
And they had a Summer League game on, went a little long, and then they went to canned programming stuff like an NFL Live from way earlier in the day.
Yeah, they had a Serena Williams
Correct.
30 for
and
30
I was like,
on this
well,
morning.
that's weird. I said, I know nothing's going on, but to cancel Sports Center.
Yeah.
So that's
so they
why.
had to cancel it simply
Well, they
because...
just aired what they had in the can,
right?
Because they didn't have any live studio control situation.
Is there any update out there as to when this thing is going to be rectified?
Well, it looks like it is now.
Our guy Paul is saying they keep coming around saying everything's still good, and he said things are coming back. He was able to restore because on the overnight, Zoo had to talk almost for 90 minutes with no calls and no breaks. And then they kind of figured out a way to play the breaks, and then they fully restored it for the last, I don't know, hour or so. And then I called Steven, made sure he was okay, and they were, the few things were down, but they're okay.
Well, good job not making us panic, Eddie, because I didn't know anything about it until Zoo said something this morning. There's people out there, even though you're a Schadenfreude guy, when a situation like this, you kept us in the dark with it. You're like, why do they need to worry about it?
They don't. Why bother you?
It's great.
When,
look at that.
What
a great friend and a colleague.
And if I had to bother you,
you would.
We would.
You would have, but you just figured we had it all under control, and things are moving forward, and things are coming back slowly, but they are coming back, which is good.
Yes.
Well, the first problem when the overnight kid called me and he was like, "Oh, it was an Odyssey update," and then when I get in, people are saying, "This is global." I was like, "Oh boy,
not good."
So I had a moment of, "Oh crap."
Yeah.
But then it was okay.
All right, very good. And we are getting back to normal minute by minute here. It's Boomer and Gio on a Feel Good Summer Friday on the Fan and CBS Sports Network.